How to check the voltages at the terminal block. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. Turn the dryer around and remove the terminal block cover. Place the multimeter on a chair and set it to read higher than 240 volts. You need to use a set of insulated alligator clips in your test probes so you don't have to be touching any wires or touching the dryer while you do this live test. Connect the test probes to terminals L1 and L2 on the terminal block like this. Connect the dryer to the wall outlet and make sure you don't touch the dryer at all. The reading should be about 240 volts. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet. Connect the test probes between terminals L1 and N. Connect the dryer again to the wall outlet and make sure you don't touch the dryer at all. The reading should be about 120 volts. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet again. Connect the test probes to terminals N and L2. The reading should be about 120 volts. The voltages should be as follows. From L1 to L2 should be about 240 volts. From L1 to N should be about 120 volts. And from L2 to N should be about 120 volts. If you get the right voltages at the terminal block, then the problem is in the dryer. If you don't get the right voltages at the terminal block, then the problem could be in the fuse or circuit breaker box or in the wall outlet. How to check the thermal fuse and how to replace it. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. You should already know how to take the dryer apart up to this point. If you don't, check the previous videos. Set your multimeter on the lower scale to read ohms. Let's check the thermal fuse for continuity. Continuity means that electricity can flow from one terminal to the next one. Remove one of the wires from the thermal fuse and take a reading between the two terminals like this. The reading should be 0 ohms. In this meter, 0 ohms is 0.6. If the meter reaches infinity, or if it reaches OL, meaning open line, the thermal fuse is bad and you will need to replace it. Remove the two wires, remove the holding screws, and remove the bad thermal fuse. Install the new thermal fuse, screw in the holding screws and connect the two wires. It doesn't matter which wire goes where. That was how to replace the thermal fuse. When you replace a bad thermal fuse, you should also replace the operating thermostat. The operating thermostat should open at 155 degrees. The thermal fuse blows at 196 degrees. So, if the thermal fuse blows, it has to be because the operating thermostat didn't open at 155 degrees. Some repairmen only replace the thermal fuse. Sometimes that works for a long time and sometimes don't. It's up to you. Here it is, how to replace the operating thermostat. The operating thermostat is next to the thermal fuse. Remove the two holding screws. Leave all the wires attached to the operating thermostat. Grab the thermostat and put it aside. Set the new thermostat in place and screw in the two holding screws. Transfer the wires from the old thermostat to the new thermostat one by one. That was how to replace the operating thermostat. How to check the push to start switch and how to replace it. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. Let me show you how to check and replace the 2-wire push to start switch. You should already know how to open the controls panel. If you don't, please check the video on how to do so. Set your multimeter on the lower scale to read ohms. Disconnect one of the wires from the push to start switch. Push on the push to start switch button and hold it. Take a reading between the two terminals on the switch. The reading while you're pushing the button in should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity or OL, meaning open line, the switch is bad and you will need to replace it. To replace the switch, pull out the knob. Disconnect the wires from the switch. Use a flat screwdriver to lift this tab. Turn the switch clockwise and take it right out. To install the switch, set it with the tab like at 8 o'clock. Then turn it until it snaps in place. Install the knob and reassemble the controls panel. That was the way to replace a 2-wire push-to-start switch. How to check and replace the push-to-start relay switch. Let me show you how the push-to-start relay switch works. When you push in the start switch button, the magnetism produced by the relay is supposed to keep the switch on like this. If you push in the start switch button and the dryer starts, but when you let go of the button the dryer stops, you will need to check the switch relay. You should already know how to open the controls panel. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. To check the switch relay, remove the wire from R2 and the wire from CT1. Set your multimeter on the highest setting to read ohms. Take a reading between the terminals R2 and CT1. The reading should be about 1600 ohms. If the reading is infinity or OL, meaning open line, the relay is bad and you will need to replace the switch. Set your multimeter on the lowest setting to read ohms. Push in the switch button and hold it in. While pushing the switch button, take a reading between R2 and R1. The reading should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity or OL, meaning open line, the switch is bad and you will need to replace it. To replace the switch, pull the knob right out. Pull the pink, the blue, and the yellow wires out. Remove the two holding screws and take the switch right out. Set the new switch in place and install the two holding screws. Each one of the wires has a different size quick disconnect terminal, and you could only connect them on the right terminal on the switch. Go ahead and connect the yellow, the pink, and the blue wires. Install the switch knob and finish by putting the controls panel back together. How to check and replace a newer style door switch. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. You should already know how to open the controls panel and remove the top panel. This is the way that you disconnect the door switch from the wire harness. Go ahead and disconnect the door switch from the wire harness. Set your ohms meter on the lower setting to read ohms. The dryer door has to be closed to check the switch. Take a reading between the terminal on the right and the terminal on the left on the switch like this. With the dryer door closed, the reading should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity or OL, meaning open line, the switch is bad and you will need to replace it. This is how to replace the door switch. If you open the dryer door and the plunger on the switch is missing or broken, you don't have to test the switch. All you have to do is replace it. To replace a bad switch, remove the two holding screws. After removing the screws, just pull the bad switch out, grab the new switch, set it in place, and screw in the two holding screws. Use the screwdriver to tighten the screws and keep the switch in place. Don't over tighten the screws because you could strip the holes on the switch. Push on the switch plunger a couple times to make sure that it's clicking on and off. Close the dryer door. Connect the door switch to the wire harness and complete reassembling the dryer, and you're done replacing a bad door switch. How to check and replace a door switch. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. You should already know how to open the controls panel and remove the top panel. Let me show you how to test the door switch. You will need to have the door closed on the dryer to do the test. Make a drawing of the switch with the location of the wires. Remove the blue wire and the white wire from the switch. Set your multimeter on the lower setting to read ohms. With the dryer door closed, take a reading between the two terminals on the switch. With the door closed, the reading should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity or OL, meaning open line, the switch is bad and you will need to replace it. This is how to replace the door switch. Before removing the door switch, make sure you make a drawing with the location of the wires. Now go ahead and remove the wires. Now remove the two holding screws and remove the switch. Grab the new switch and put the actuator on it. Set the new switch in place and screw in the two holding screws. Now tighten the two screws. Use the drawing of the switch to install the wires on the right terminals. Go ahead and install the wires on the switch. Try the switch and make sure that it clicks on and off. Close the dryer door and put the rest of the dryer together, and you're done replacing the door switch. How to check the belt switch. Disconnect your electric or gas dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. This is the way that the belt switch works. When the idle pulley is up because the belt is attached to the dryer, the switch is on. And when the idle pulley is down because the belt broke, the switch is off and the dryer will not start. You should already know how to take the dryer apart up to this point. If you don't, go back and take a look at the videos on how to take the dryer apart before proceeding. To test the switch, disconnect the wire harness from the motor first. Disconnect the yellow wire from the belt switch. Set your multimeter on the lower setting to read ohms. Take a reading between the terminal on the belt switch and the terminal with the blue wire on the overload protector on the motor. Move the idle pulley to your left until the idle pulley is no longer pushing on the belt switch plunger, and hold it there. The reading should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity, the belt switch is bad and you will need to replace it. This is how to replace a bad belt switch. Disconnect the motor wire harness. Remove the idle pulley spring. Remove the idle pulley holding screw and remove the idle pulley. Remove the yellow wire from the belt switch. Remove the two holding screws on the belt switch. Pull the switch out and remove the blue wire. Get the new switch and install the blue wire. Set the switch in place and use a piece of coat hanger wire right through one of the holes to align the switch. Screw in one of the holding screws. Remove the wire and screw in the other screw. Tighten the screws with the screwdriver and try the switch, make sure it clicks on and off. Set the idle pulley in place and screw in the holding screw. Now this screw has like a sleeve, and that sleeve has to go inside of the hole in the idle pulley, okay? Connect the yellow wire to the belt switch and install the idle pulley spring. Move the idle pulley up and down to make sure that the switch clicks on and off. Install the motor wire harness. Reassemble the rest of the dryer and you're done checking and replacing the belt switch. How to test the motor with a homemade test cord. Disconnect your electric or gas dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. You should already know how to take the dryer apart up to this point. Get an extension cord and attach two insulated alligator clips like this. Disconnect the motor wire harness. Disconnect the blue wire from the motor overload protector. Disconnect the yellow wire from the belt switch. Connect the yellow wire to the overload protector switch. This way we can run the motor without having to use the belt switch. Connect the alligator clip from your test cord to terminals marked 5M and 4M on the motor wire harness like this. Terminal 4M is a blue wire and terminal 5M is a white wire. Plug in the wire harness to the motor. To minimize the chance of electrical shock or injury, please don't touch the dryer after you plug in the test cord. If you plug in the test cord and the motor runs okay, then you know the problem is not on the motor. Disconnect the test cord. If you plug in the test cord and the motor hums like this, unplug it right away. You have a bad motor. If you plug in the test cord and the motor doesn't do anything, you have a bad motor. How to check the motor overload protector. Disconnect your electric or gas dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. You should already know how to take the dryer apart up to this point. This is a motor overload protector. Disconnect the blue wire from the motor overload protector. Set your multimeter on the lower scale to read ohms. Take a reading between the two terminals on the motor overload protector like this. The reading should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity or oil, meaning open line, the motor overload protector switch is bad and you will need to replace it. That was the way to check the motor overload protector. How to replace a bad motor. Disconnect your electric or gas dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. You should already know how to take the dryer apart up to this point. Remove this clip and the blower cover. You're going to need a 1/2-inch extension bar to remove the blower. Insert the extension bar into the square blower hole. Connect the ratchet to the extension bar. You will need to use an adjustable wrench to hold the motor shaft while you remove the blower, like this. Use a pair of gloves to protect your knuckles. Turn the blower wheel clockwise to break it loose. Keep turning the blower wheel clockwise until it's off the motor shaft. Then take it right out. Remove the adjustable wrench from the motor shaft. Disconnect the motor wire harness. Remove the blue wire from the motor overload protector. Remove the yellow wire from the belt switch. Use a flat screwdriver to remove the motor clamp. Push down and pry until it comes out. Remove the front motor clamp. Remove the rear motor clamp. Now all you have to do is grab the motor and take it right out. Don't forget to read the instructions that come with the new motor. Grab the new motor and set it in place. This is the way that you lock the motor clamp in place. Place the screwdriver like this. Hit the top of the screwdriver with the hammer until it snaps in place. Just hit it hard enough for the clamp to snap in place. Go ahead and install the rear motor clamp. Go ahead and install the front motor clamp. Connect the blue wire to the motor overload protector. Connect the yellow wire to the belt switch. Connect the adjustable wrench to the motor shaft. Set the blower in place and turn it counterclockwise until it screws all the way into the motor shaft. Hold the motor shaft with the adjustable wrench and use the ratchet to tighten the blower. Remove the extension bar from the blower hole. Remove the adjustable wrench from the motor shaft. Install the blower cover and this clip. Reassemble the rest of the dryer and you're done replacing the motor. How to check the timer contacts. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet before proceeding. Set the timer dial on the cycle that you use the most. You should already know how to open the controls panel. Go ahead and open it. Set your multimeter on the higher scale to read ohms. You will need to remove the wire harness with the red, black, and blue wires on it. Take a reading between the terminals marked BU and BK on the timer. The reading should be 0 ohms. If the reading is infinity or oil, meaning open line, the timer is bad and you will need to replace it. This is the way to replace a bad timer. Remove the timer knob by pulling it straight out. Remove the 2 timer holding screws and pull the timer out with the wire still attached to it. Put the new timer in place and screw in the 2 holding screws. Transfer the wires from the bad timer to the new timer. Install the timer knob and reassemble the controls panel, and you're done replacing a bad timer. How to check the motor relay. Disconnect the dryer from the wall outlet again. You will need to open the controls panel to check the motor relay. Disconnect one of the pink and black wires from the relay. Take a reading with your ohms meter between the two terminals that the pink and black wires go connected to, like this. The reading should be between 2 and 3,000 ohms. If the reading is infinity, or OL, meaning open line, the relay is bad and you will need to replace it. The even heat electronic control assembly is what turns on the motor relay. So, if the previous parts and the relay check OK, you have to assume that the even heat electronic control assembly is the part causing the problem. Check the even heat electronic control assembly for burnt parts, like resistors, transistors, or capacitors. You're working with very sensitive and expensive parts here. Think before you take a chance on replacing the electronic control assembly. Make sure that's what you want to do. And follow the instructions that come with the even heat electronic control assembly before replacing it.